Sponsored by Taylor Freelance, Rainier Ballistics, Hodgson Powders, and JPL Precision.
Hey Powder Factor fans, I'm Rick, and although the IDPA rulebook's been out now for 6 months or so, we still got some little bits of the rules I kind of want to go over. We did the episode earlier about reloading and movement, and I kind of glossed over a part of the rulebook that's new. I talked about it, but I didn't really go into the ramifications of it, and that is the appearing or surprise target. For a period of years, the only time you would engage targets while moving is if the course of fire started with the shooter out in the open at the start signal and moving to the initial cover position. So you were never moving from cover to cover. That's now been reintroduced into the sport. We do have engaging on the move between cover positions, and as part of that process of reestablishing that within the game, we've had the creation of a kind of and I want to say definition, but at least a defined vision barrier that's apart from a cover wall. So at our matches, we'll often have a wall that we use as cover and a wall that we use as a vision barrier, and they look all but identical. We try to mix up the colors and things like that to reduce the confusion. But here's an example of a course of fire that has a cover position, P1. We're leaving P1. We're going to advance to P2. And this wall that's downrange is our vision barrier. When you're at P1, you cannot see T1, T2, or T3. But as you leave cover, as you get about here, you're going to see T1, and then as you keep moving, T2 and T3 are going to be revealed. And there are specific reloading rules that apply to those circumstances. And I have to use the old glasses. When moving between two positions of cover, the shooter discovers a target, as illustrated, behind a vision barrier or after a target is activated and appears. So it could be a situation where we've got the vision barrier, or you could have one of those bear trap activators that you step on, or you could kick over a popper or something that causes targets to appear after you're out in the open. Up to 6 shots may be required. So again, our illustration shows 3 targets that are going to be engaged 2 each. So that's your maximum of 6. And they must be engaged on the move. And that is sort of where your difference between cover and vision barrier is. If you have cover, you must use it. You must stop and pie the edge of that cover. If it's a vision barrier, you can't stop. You must keep moving, because the targets that have appeared from behind the vision barrier must be engaged on the move. Now, if you run out of ammo while you're engaging, you may initiate the reload while advancing to the next shooting position. And the next shooting position is the place where you are going to arrive to take your next shot at targets other than those that are on the move. So if you've got a P1 where you're going to engage and a P2 where you're going to engage, if you run out of ammo in between and you initiate your reload, you must continue moving to P2 and must discontinue engaging. All you can do is complete your reload as you advance to the next position. If after arriving at the next position, in the case of our illustration here, P2, if the shooter can safely complete the engagement or re-engagement of any remaining in the open targets from the next shooting position, P2, the shooter may do so without incurring additional target scoring or procedural error penalties. So essentially, the targets that you can engage on the move before you run out of ammo must be engaged on the move. After you've run dry, you can no longer engage on the move. After you arrive, you must then engage from the next shooting position. Or you'll incur penalties. You can't after you've initiated your reload, if you complete your reload and continue engaging on the move, there's penalties. Now, and there's other rules about what if it's an open-ended stage where there is no P2. You're engaging on the move is the end of the course of fire. There is no more cover. If there is no next shooting position, the on-the-move targets are the final targets to be engaged. No reload in the open is allowed, and the shooter shall be assessed penalties for point down and FTN. So what you can see, based on how the penalties are applied and what happens to you if you run dry, don't run dry. It used to be that the sport discouraged on-the-clock tactical reloads. The way the new rules are laid out, certain circumstances like this encourage you to perform an on-the-clock retention reload to avoid running out of ammo and avoid potential penalties, avoid having to re-engage after reloading. If you reload before you go, you're not going to run out and you're not going to have to worry about it. Now, what if the course of fire, instead of being a lateral move, as illustrated here, where you have the opportunity to engage the target after you arrive at P2, what if it's vertical movement, vertical in the football sense, where you're moving down range? Here's P1 down here at the bottom, and you're going to leave P1 for P2. And again, we've got a vision barrier. I've ID'd the vision barrier to differentiate it from the walls by putting this shading on it. But not until you've left P1 and started to move down range are these three targets going to be visible. Well, obviously, if you run your gun dry at some point between here and here, the targets are no longer available from when you arrive at P2. If you initiate your reload, you'll arrive at P2, and they're no longer available because you'll break the 180 if you shoot at them. And obviously, you can't do that. So what have they decided to allow you to do? The shooter has the option of going back to reload, if available, and if going back can be done safely. So what that says is, if you run out from P1, let's say you've only got 2 rounds in your gun, you run out from P1, engage the target that's numbered as T3 here, and you run dry, rather than continuing down range and completing your reload and now being in a position where you cannot re-engage, you're allowed to back up to cover, do your reload, and then advance again to complete the engagement of the targets on the move. So again, if you're aware of the procedure for the course of fire, you know that 6 rounds are required in this on-the-move engagement between P1 and P2. Whether the movement is downrange or whether the movement is across the range, it would behoove you to know how many rounds you have in your gun when you leave and ensure that you have enough. If there are 6 rounds required in the open, reload at P1 before you go, so you don't have to worry about running dry and backing up or re-engaging after you've arrived at P2. Do a reload so that you have 6 rounds in your gun. And of course, people who complain about how unrealistic some IDPA rules. I had a little debate on a guy on a forum today about how stupid the rule is that says you have to have the same number of rounds in each magazine on your belt. And I just thought, okay, you can say you don't really like that rule, but to say it's stupid, I think it makes perfect sense. Not allowing people, I mean, who walks around on the street with, let's say you've got a gun and 2 magazines on your belt, are you liable to have all 3 magazines loaded to capacity, or are you liable to have one of them downloaded by 1 round, one of them downloaded by 3 rounds, another one downloaded by 2 rounds? Because if you get in a gunfight, you know where you're going to want to reload. I mean, I'd say that's stupid. Is this idea that you're going to be able to plan in advance when your gun is going to need to be reloaded. And one of the beauties of the on-the-clock tack load is you can reload your gun anytime you want when you think you're going to advance out and need to fire your rounds, knowing in advance how many rounds that is. This idea, I remember I used to hear people railing against not being allowed to reload in the open. I mean, we're going back again a few rule books back. You couldn't reload in the open. And they would say, if I was in a gunfight and I ran my gun dry in the open, I wouldn't wait, I'd reload right away. Well, because I'm so tactical, and I'm like, well, if you're so tactical, why did you leave cover with 2 rounds in your gun? I mean, the question, the comment is kind of stupid if the reasoning behind it is, I'm so tactical that when I run my gun dry, I'm going to reload. Well, if you're so tactical, why do you run out from cover with an empty gun? So I think it's the same thing here in that if you're behind cover and you're playing a game that kind of penalizes you for running out of ammo on the move, you can counter that by reloading before you go. But that's also sound tactical thinking. Here I am at cover with a gun that only has 2 rounds in it. I'm going to leave cover and run across open ground to another spot. Maybe I should reload before I go. So I think it's good thinking tactically to reload, and it also benefits your score to reload if you know you're going to run out. Now, of course, it could also have to do with how many rounds do you have. I mean, there's 2 rounds in the gun, there's 5 rounds in the gun. You could get into a little bit of this kind of balancing of, okay, I'm going to get a miss maybe, and I'm going to get a failure to neutralize. You can start to play that game of trying to balance your penalties against the time it would take you to remedy the penalties. Okay, I'm going to do a reload and fire 1 shot. Under certain circumstances, you might have the gears going in your head saying, I'd be better off if I didn't take that shot. But I would suggest, as a general principle, if you know you need 6 rounds before you leave cover and you've got 2 rounds in your gun, reload before you go. Then you don't have to worry about the penalties. So there's just an example of a rule that is tactically sound, and it also gives you a better score if you're able to think in advance about when am I going to run out, what are the targets I'm going to face. And another good reason, when you go to a match, if you're an IDPA shooter already, you may be aware that there was a huge blow up at a major match recently where a shooter was assured by a staff member that a certain stage was to be shot a certain way, and as it turns out, that wasn't correct. And there was a brouhaha about should you be granted a reshoot if a staff member gives you erroneous information about a stage procedure. And of course, my response would be the stage procedure is written down somewhere. Go read it yourself. Don't go into a course of fire not aware of what's coming. And so if you've got a situation like this where you're moving from P1 to P2 and you're going to fire 6 shots on the round, reload your gun so you've got 6 rounds in it. Simple as that. So that's probably near the end of the IDPA rules. We may get into a few more. I mean, like I'll mention power factor. We've got some new power factors. I'll go over that real quickly. So the 2 revolver divisions have been combined into 1 division, kind of with 2 categories. The stock revolver, which is what used to be SSR, mostly 38 specials, loaded with speed loaders. The power factor there is 105. We've got the new enhanced revolver, which now has a power factor, I think, of 155. So that's down a little bit from the old ESR. Both of them are down a little bit. Bug division is 95 for either the base cartridge for bug semi-auto is 38 or 380 auto. The base cartridge for bug revolver is 38 special. Power factor for both is 95. And the other division, CCP, the new CCP division, it's also 125, as is ESP and SSP. And then, of course, custom defensive pistol remains 165. I was just glossing over some of those rules today, just kind of glazed eyes, more likely. But if there's any little detail rules, questions like that about the power factor one came up. Somebody just asked me about it the other day. What are the new power factors? I couldn't find them in the rule book, kind of a thing. So if you have any questions about the new rules, something that we didn't cover, go ahead and just send us an email at powerfactorshow@gmail.com, or of course you can find us on Facebook at the Power Factor Facebook site. And we'll see you on YouTube and iTunes and all the other places we are. Shoot safe, have fun, and we'll see you later.